A chance will save the blinking planet. Food, fibre, fuel and medicine, necessities for life. A benefit to all of us, our wonder and delight. Within this smelly weed, there's more than meets the eye. So much, much more than smoking, it can cleanse our dirty skies. Cannabis, cannabis, will save the planet with cannabis.
Good evening, Steve Danks, Hemp Works Radio on the timeforhemp.com radio network, part of the iHeart Radio. Now, tonight, for the second time and the second part, Dr. Robert Melamede. Good evening, Dr. Bob.
Hello there, how are you?
Me, I'm marvellous. Had a totally stressful day due to technology, but we're here now. So, we're on the first part of the interview, I think we got up to the point of where we was going to start talking. We was on to the endocannabinoid system and how important it was to the human race and virtually every other animal that has a spine on this planet at the moment. Yeah.
So I guess
take it from there.
I was hopefully I gave the foundation for the physics of life, so we understand that regardless of what religion you're at, it's hard to deny the realities of things once they can be proven. And I think we're at a point now where, you have to accept evolution as a natural process. Or if you don't believe in evolution, you still have to accept that there's a continuity, a continual increase in endocannabinoid activity in the brains of evolving species or species that were just put down where some had greater capacity than others.
Bob, can I just say something, Dr. Bob?
Yes, sir.
Now, after I took this cannabis medicine after taking the 47 weeks of interferon, and I went back to see my consultant that was actually trained by apparently one of the top liver surgeons in the world. And I'm not going to mention his name, but when my consultant saw my scans and he saw that the regeneration of the liver had taken place, even though it was end-stage cirrhosis, and all my stomach linings that were bleeding constantly had repaired themselves, and the 4 bandings that I had put inside of my liver, and all the other things that had gone wrong with me. When he saw that I was healthy and fit and regenerated after 1 year, I said to him, well, what do you make of that? He said to me, well, this is what we call in the medical industry a miracle. And I said, excuse me, sir. I said, you're going to have to put that down as cannabis. And he said, I can't. I said, but that's what's caused it, because you haven't given me anything in the last year to have caused that. You give me drugs for the year previous to that killed me twice. So a physician, not just a physician, a consultant, a liver specialist of hepatitis C would rather believe that it was a miracle than cannabis. And I said to him as well, I said, we have a problem with that, sir, if it's a miracle. He said, why that? I said, because you are of the Muslim faith and I'm apparently of a Christian faith. So whose God calls this miracle? And he just looked at me and laughed. Yeah.
Well, the miracle is that we can influence our health because we are living. And it is our nature to try and live. And that's why most people, unless they're severely damaged in other ways, strive to live. And most people would prefer to live healthy, happy lives rather than unhealthy and unhappy lives. And the most amazing social irony, is that cannabis and our endocannabinoid system and the synergy of the two of them is really, what nature has provided us as a tremendous tool to enhance our very being. And yet our social structure has made it a prohibition. The absurdity is what we're seeing now is a flipping of the reality where the people are looking at the guiding social system, our governments and rules, and seeing that they are absurd and ridiculous in so many cases, and recognizing that they are made by blips, and that the people of the future are going to be the flips more so than now. We're shifting the balance. The power of dominance is going from those who want to dominate to those who don't want to dominate but want to cooperate. It's
co-cooperation. And as Jack said, the great Jack Herrera, who wrote that wonderful book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, it was perfect, wasn't it? The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
Yep.
And as we stand up and say the Emperor wears no clothes, the more of us realise it's just a facade, isn't it? And what you scientists are telling us, and when we look at the history and the antiquity of what this plant is, then it would be absolutely stupid and idiotic not to use this plant for the very purpose that it was put on Earth for.
Yeah, I mean,
clearly called it a sativa.
Yeah.
Sativa means useful, a useful plant. And tonight I sat with a man on an island that has a history of cannabis growing going back possibly pre-Roman, whose family's lived on this island since that time. And we had the most amazing cannabis conversation. On the island of Arcaria, a Greek island that 2,000 years ago was possibly what we might call now cannabis central, where people came here and traded and worked with this plant in all sorts of formats. So it's not something new, is it, Dr. Bob? It's something that is very old, but we're very lucky now that intelligent people, or as I say, beautiful minds like yourself and Dr. all these other great ones, the Mechamulas, and I like the Whitney, the raw juicer guy. You scientist guys now have shown us how this works in science. And it is part of life, and not just part of human life to me. You guys talk about endocannabinoid system inside of the body. I come from the eco side of it. It's also part of the system of the earth. It's like, if you like, it's the endocannabinoid system of the planet. It makes everything harmonise, and it makes everything work. And every plant works with this plant, because she's the queen of plants. And she's been here so long. Understandably, all things revolve around cannabis. The Romans knew it, the Greeks knew it, and possibly people a long time before that knew it. So it's just so refreshing to hear the science and how this works for us.
Well, and that's the beauty, is that intelligent beings can learn from the science that the plant is teaching us something. Evolution, God, whatever, that has created this unfolding of time. The cannabis plant provides a very unique opportunity to enhance our ability to basically be creative and therefore sustainable. So what we have to start to do is understand the very nature of life, so that we can shape our minds and collectively through our minds, our social systems and our political and economic systems in a fashion that's going to be consistent with the creative force, whatever kind of God you want to call it. For me, it's just science, generalized open system dynamics, flowing energy. But see, it's because really all people come from the same side of the fence, in that they're human and they're alive. Yeah. And then we start to partition. And that fundamental partition is really whether the people are cannabinoid endowed or not. Because intrinsically, half the population is going to be less in their endocannabinoid activity for any of the things that cannabis regulates. And remember, cannabis regulates, your endocannabinoid system regulates everything in your body from conception until death. So, you might have some person who's in pain, but really optimistic and tolerates their pain. So they may have enough cannabinoids mentally, but wherever the pain is coming from, maybe arthritis or something else, where they're generating pain because they don't have enough cannabinoid activity there. So since cannabis regulates open-mindedness, which is really our door to the future, cannabis regulates really the evolution of human thinking because of its ability to promote our ability to forget. If you can't forget wrong information, then you're stuck living with it. The drug warriors, cannabis is so bad. Well, how could you say that in view of so much evidence, scientifically, anecdotally, historically, to the contrary? It's because these people were fed the crap from our mentally ill governments, the lies that were spread really for selfish and greedy reasons and ignorant reasons. And people, once they learn that, if they are cannabinoid deficient, are going to be stuck with that view forever. And what I'm suggesting here is that it's time for the cannabinoid endowed people to utilize the knowledge of what the endocannabinoid system is and what the plant is to increase the global human content of cannabinoids and hence increase cannabinoid activity in the world's population to make it more consistent with that creative force that started before there was any life. The creative force caused by flowing energy allowed and mandated that molecules work together to form more complex entities. And it's that ongoing repetitive process of creation and movement forward into more complexity that has made us.
And in spirituality, if you look into the Bhagavad Gita and Shiva and the sadhus, this is what they're saying.
Yeah, a lot of religious thought comes together. If you think of him, and I don't know how accurate this is because I'm only religious in the scientific sense. For me, science is my religion, my guide for how to live and what to do. But from what I see, Christianity wants love, Judaism wants knowledge, and Islam wants submission. Well,
and
what
Hinduism?
I'm saying is that we all have to submit as we gain knowledge so that we can become more cooperative and compassionate and loving. They all go together, and the solution that binds them together is the truth of the science that I'm describing, which is again why the global chemistry set of humanity needs to just add a little bit more spice to us to be again consistent with where we came from, and therefore, barring any other reason to think otherwise, where we will continue to go. And that is to increase the endocannabinoid activity on the forefront of evolution.
Besides the science of it, Bob, you have a personal experience of this, don't you?
Well, I've used cannabis for 52 years now on, a pretty regular basis. And most recently, I've been able to really benefit from, my overall scientific understanding of what life is and how I can change on a systemic, holistic level certain imbalances that resulted from my genetics and from my lifestyle in an effort to improve things that had been bothering me for a decade and were potentially getting worse and worse are now getting better and better. So
can I just put that in street language? Right?
In street language.
Basically, that's right. You held down a pretty responsible job, and you used cannabis during that period that you was working, and you used cannabis.
I used cannabis when I started college. It made me more aware of my ignorance and how if I'm going to go to school, you might as well try learning. And then the more successful you become in learning, the more addicting it is, because think about it. What does learning mean? It means that you're moving your information content and your ability further from equilibrium. Learning is something...
Street language. It's called excitement.
Yeah, it's charging your brain up with life.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what excitement is, right? But it's excitement, healthy excitement. You can be excited doing things that are not healthy. This is organic excitement because your system, your collection of molecules actually feels better by doing things that are consistent with life.
So I'm just going to rule that back again. So here we have Dr. Robert Melamede, who's used cannabis all his life, held down a job, quite an important job, by the way, and now you've retired. I believe you've retired now.
Yes, sir.
And so again, now possibly you're using a more cannabis material, and you're finding more benefit.
I'm using more because I suffer from this chronic illness that we all suffer from. I call it olfartitis. You know, you get
Oh, I had that, Bob, but I've taken those of cannabis and got over it. So I'm interested to see where you're at.
That's the point. Cannabis is the best medicine for olfartitis. And olfartitis manifests itself in so many different ways, you know. It could be cardiovascular disease, autoimmune diseases, it could be anything, because we tend to develop these age-related illnesses because we're exposing ourselves to the friction of life, which is free radicals. And the solution is to increase the oil of life, our endocannabinoid system.
Okay, so Bob, I'm going to throw one at you now, right? So you said all that with all this wonderful scientific blah, 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 right? And now you're retired, you're taking more, and by the sound of it, you're benefiting more. So do you think there's a limit on how much you should really take, or is it like take as much as you like?
Well, I would say take as much as you need.
Ah, okay then. Yeah.
See,
Well,
what defines need? Need defines that which makes you healthier.
Fine. Yeah, so I concur with that then, because really I believe it's a vibrational plant, and you find your personal level with it. And whatever that level is, and like if you're in Jamaica living with the Rasta people, they will get up and smoke day and night. That's their level. And possibly some of us living in Western societies, we don't need quite as much as that.
Well,
but I certainly feel that there is no overdose limit.
I found, and there's pros and cons to this.
Sorry?
I find that, because I eat oil about 3 times a day, that
you say, come on, explain. What do you mean you eat oil?
I rarely smoke. I'm an eater.
Yeah, but no. What do you mean you take, what oil you take? What, olive oil? Lard oil?
THC extra, Rick Simpson oil,
cannabis. Right, okay. I want to pick up on it. So you explain to the people what a Rick Simpson oil is.
These are oils, extracts from cannabis that are made with various solvents or procedures. Yeah. And it's kind of like purified hash in a sense.
Okay. So how much do you take of this every day?
It depends on what I got, I take recently I've had a syringe that have had a fairly thick alcohol extract, and I would squeeze out an inch of that in the morning and an inch of that in the afternoon, an inch of that at night.
Oh, look, the doctor professor's talking about inches. Well, how much you taking in milligrams?
I definitely, in general, would say I probably only take maybe. I would say at the.
Don't be shy.
No, I'm just trying to be accurate, and okay. It's hard to say, but I take under 100 milligrams a day in general. Well, listen to this irony here, The people who are more cannabinoid endowed, because they are more optimistic, are more likely to try things. They're more adventurous because they feel they'll be successful. Okay? The people who are cannabinoid deficient, they are much less likely to try something new because they don't adjust well to change, because their biochemistry is stressed by change, because all change ultimately, even if it's good change, is biochemically stressful. But if you make enough endocannabinoids, if your body makes enough pot or you take enough pot, that you adjust to that change much better and it's much less stressful. And that's part of the whole anti-aging aspect, because stress is associated with the free radical production and therefore the damage and therefore the deterioration instead of the growth and synthesis, which intrinsically requires cooperation and love.
That's poetry. Right, Bob, sorry, another $1 million question. Are your endocannabinoid efficient?
I think that me and my children are endocannabinoid sufficient. We share, fortunately, the happy gene, and that just makes life a lot easier.
So they're all breastfed?
Yes.
Of course. And as we all know, the science says that breast milk is very similar to the cannabis milk.
No, you're missing a very important point here.
Oh, go for it, please. Tell me. As I say, I'm the layman. I'm the street boy.
There's actually psychoactive endocannabinoids in mother's milk.
What you're saying, that mothers are feeding their children what the DEA for many years have called a drug?
Exactly.
So basically then, in a layman's term, mothers that breastfeed could possibly be charged with drug trafficking?
Well, you know, that favorite jokes when I give my talks. Should we arrest nursing mothers for getting their kids stoned, or should we just arrest all women for walking around with paraphernalia?
Oh my God. We've hit something here, haven't we? Well, ladies, I think all the ladies that are possibly in Italian, I love the word Italian word for inginta or pregnant, I think you should write in and I think this is an open debate, really, because we don't want people going around saying that you can't breastfeed your children cannabis. As Mother Nature designed.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, it gets even funnier. There's another interesting little possibility here. That what, in terms of cannabinoids being in breast milk, that's unambiguously true, and you can see the consequences if you inhibit that in mice that don't have the CB1 receptor, or by using drugs that inhibit the CB1 receptor. They're not very fertile. And if you inhibit the CB1 receptor on the newborn mice, they actually starve to death and die from never nursing. You know, it's fundamentally in there. But beyond that, there's another very interesting possibility. That is absolutely true, but this is now a possibility. First of all, what we see is that mammals are an increase in evolution compared to before they appeared. And we...
No, sorry, can you just explain that again, Bob? That didn't come quite through clear.
Well, there's a series of progression in evolution, going from simpler to more complex. And, mankind is at the forefront of evolution in our ability to adapt and to adjust our environment to... So we don't even have to adapt. We adapt our environment to us, whereas historically things survive by adapting to the environment.
Got you. Dolphins that swim in the sea have adapted to swimming in the sea, and they haven't tried to change the sea, where man has tried to change his environment to suit his needs. Man, we got you.
Right?
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
See, and that's all part of having the increased complexity that comes with our brain and with our ability for our brain to be creative.
Well, look, it's been wonderful talking to you. Are we going to do a part 3? There seems to be loads more to talk about. I'm sorry I've interrupted so much tonight, Bob. But
no, I just go with the flow. You see, that's the whole thing here. That's the whole beauty, that life doesn't have to be all black and white and straight lines. In nature,
organized.
Black and white, and nature is not straight lines. Yeah. And yet, because as we first started to learn to manipulate our environment, the creativity was the novelty, but then you try to make things rigid so you could reproduce things. And there was a time where that's what was needed, You needed to develop the mechanics of engineering skills, for example. But to drive it to create new things required creativity. So there's a dialogue between the mind and creativity and the mechanics of implementing things. And we've reached a point now where we can do such incredible manipulations of our environment and of the matter that makes up our environment that we have now come to a decision point where we can either blindly move forward driven by ignorance and greed and insecurity and fear and aggression and all of the sickness that characterizes so much of humanity, or we can decide that we want to really survive and thrive into a future in which we would be cooperative, in which energy would become cheaper for a variety of innovative reasons, done out of creativity, enhanced by the cannabinoid system of every human being. And we move into a whole new future where we interact with our environment, with each other in a way that reflects the creative nature, the harmony, the love, the submission to the reality that there are rules of nature, of whatever God you want to call it, but of the world around us. There are basic operating principles, and if you're going to go against the nature, it used to be, remember the advertisement, it's not nice to try and fool Mother Nature. You can't fool Mother Nature in the long run. You can make believe and you can rape and pillage for so long, but eventually you run out of it and you get screwed. So let's be smart and move into the future and embrace the historical reality of an ongoing increase in endocannabinoids and cannabinoid activity, because now we're smart enough to grow it and analyze it and discover it and use it better and better all the time.
One love.
Yeah.
Or as Mr. Mahatma Gandhi said, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
It is, and more people are learning that, and cannabis facilitates that knowledge in that direction. So, of course, you're going to have the people who benefit, Eisenhower said, beware of the industrial complex. And, there are people, think of the Cheneys and the Rumsfelds and some of these other beautiful people. It's a strange world. And right now, the cannabis revolution is enhancing the movement towards a greater concentration of flips, forward-looking people, cannabinoid endowed, adaptable, peace-loving, harmonious, creative people, away from the Gestapo of the past.
It is just so true. I just feel that
it is. It's so true.
People, I walk around in my own little life, and I see people that have not got this endocannabinoid system up and running. Yep. We've changed. Something's gone on in life, and we seem to have changed. We're endocannabinoid rich or endocannabinoid deficient, and them that are endocannabinoid deficient, you're not working properly, brothers and sisters. Yeah, honestly, and it becomes so clear that when your brain is endocannabinoid rich and when your body's working with this plant inside of it, it's like drinking water, it's like taking carrot juice, it's like sunlight. It's so fundamental to the life that you live, and it benefits your life so much. It'd be stupid, man. It'd be like not drinking water and the doctor saying you're dehydrated and giving you pills for dehydration when all you need is a little drop of water. One love.
And tragically, that's an accurate representation of so much of what goes on. I was with a man this weekend whose friend had a pinned ankle from various problems that he had, and he twisted his.
When you say pinned, is that with metal?
Yes, and he twisted it, and he went to the hospital, and the doctor looked at it and said, "Oh, this is terrible. We're going to have to amputate it tonight." And my friend who's with his friend looks at it and says, "I don't smell any infection. I don't see any swelling. What the fuck is this guy talking about?" So he calls up the surgeon who originally did it and said, "That doesn't sound right to me." And he winds up the surgeon, checks it out, and of course he didn't need his leg amputated, his ankle amputated that night. The countries of the world, the governments are enriched in cannabinoid deficient blips.
Yes.
They are greedy, they are power hungry, they are insecure, they are dangerous to the survival of mankind. We have to replace our governments with people who are cannabinoid endowed, the same way that governments in the past tested you and said you couldn't work in the government if you used marijuana. We need to reverse that. If you're cannabinoid deficient and you don't properly supplement with the necessary nutrient to make your brain function correctly, we don't want you in the government.
I'll tell you what as well, Bob. The interesting thing I find about this plant, I mean, I've been working with it on hands-on situation for many years. I find now that really what I know about it, I'm just learning about it. It just seems to be opening itself up to so many different possibilities.
Well, you know what? Think of what you're really saying. When you say you're opening yourself up to possibilities, it means you are becoming more alive. What we have to do is we have to shape our minds so that our wants and our desires and our efforts are consistent with the creative force. We have to submit to this reality of reality. And that is one of cooperation at this point for mankind to survive.
Yeah. And I want to survive.
All righty, buddy. It's been fun.
Yeah, man, you know it. Look, Dr. Robert Melamede, thank you very, very much. What can I say?
Thank you very, very much.